Will Goldstein here from thekingscourt.com. Again, there's a chance to subscribe down there in that corner or like the videos. Make comments, whatever you like to do. Again, I'm a musician, working on my 11th album I'm working on right now, so that ought to be out, I don't know, the next month or so. Who knows? So anyway, this is we're doing the C.S. Lewis Mere Christianity, and we're in book 4. He calls this 2 notes, but that's not very descriptive, so I'm giving it a title which is really about, or leading to at least, the body of Christ. He starts up by saying, why, if God wanted sons, why did he not beget many sons at the outset, instead of first making us go through this long, difficult process, painful process? And he says one part of that answer is pretty easy, and then he says the other part is really beyond anything that we could ever possibly understand. So then he kind of alludes to the first part, and he says this process of being turned from a creature into a son, it really wouldn't have been that difficult if the human race had not turned away from God. But we did turn away from God, and that did make it very difficult and very painful. So he gave us free will, and that's what we chose, because a world of automata could never love, and therefore people in it would never really know true and infinite happiness. So all Christians are agreed there in the full original sense that there's really only one Son of God. So alluding back to what he was saying before, he's kind of, he was leading to this picture of many sons. And we are many sons, but now he's clarifying what he really means by many sons, as opposed to there's only really one son. So he said, we all really agree that there is really only one Son of God, and the Son in this print here is with a capital S, not a small s. If we're asking, could there have been many, then we find ourselves in very deep water. And that has a lot to do with Christology and, the theology about the Trinity. And by understanding that, you can see why there really can only be one true, fully Son of God. But when you're talking about God, the irreducible fact is, which all other facts really depend on, it's nonsense to ask if it could have been any other way. In other words, it's useless, futile to imagine how it could have been different than it is. It is what it is, the old saying goes. It is a difficult idea, begetting many sons. In order for that to happen, for there to be many sons, they would have to be different from one another. So now he's describing why it's complex and impossible for that to have been. If you have 2 pennies, well, these are 2 shapes, but really they are 2. Though they may look the same, they are 2. They occupy different places, and they contain different atoms. To think of them as different, we have to bring in space and matter, and to bring in nature and the created universe. I can understand the distinction between the Father and the Son. One begets, the other is begotten. The Father's relation to the Son is not really the same as the Son's relation that exists to the Father. If there were several sons, this would be a problem. They would all be related to one another, to the Father in the same way. How could they differ? The idea of several sons seems really only possible by imagining them as human forms standing together in space. I pretend by thinking about something that exists before any universe was made. When I try to think of the Father beginning many sons before all worlds, that idea really fades away into mere words. Through the Son, the universe was created. There's only one creative force that created the universe. And so many suns creating the universe, there's one mastermind. And the Son is the image of the Father and the mind of the Father. He only does and says what he sees the Father doing and saying. And the idea of many sons is absurd, really. Christianity thinks of human individuals not as members of a group, but as organs in a body. So we're getting to the body of Christ. They're different from one another, and they each contribute what the other one is unable to contribute, because we each have different gifts. You and I are different organs, and you are tempted not to bother about someone else's troubles. It's no business of yours, though he is different from you. He is part of the same organism as you are. If you forget that he belongs to this same organism, then, well, you'll become an individualist. You won't see yourself part of the body of Christ. You're an isolated individualist outside of that body. If you want to make people all alike, well, then you'll be a totalitarian. So he's giving those two views, and a Christian is really neither one. Which of these two errors is the worst? Well, the devil, he wants you to go from one to the other, so he relies on your dislike of the one error to draw you gradually into the opposite one. You know, my whole personality is based on the center. You know, my whole life is based on avoiding the extreme left and avoiding the extreme right. Somehow this straight and narrow down the middle. I like to think of it as the golden mean by Aristotle, just straight down the middle. And that's what he's talking about. That's the truth of the matter. One error is individualist, the other is totalitarian. And so do not let yourself be fooled by these tricks. We have to keep our eye on the goal, the straight and narrow path to Jesus, by becoming part of the body of Christ.